Welcome to Chi-Town Horror Stories by Karl Mars. Every city has its own demons, its own kind of darkness. In Chicago, these shadows aren't just lurking in the alleys or hidden in the whispers of the wind. They're in the very heart of the streets, pulsing with each heartbeat of this great city. These stories aren't about the supernatural beings you find in movies. They're about the real horrors. The ones that walk among us, unseen, unheard, but always there. Man, let me tell you something about growing up in the Chi in the 80s. It wasn't for the faint of heart, especially not on the West Side. You had to be tough, or at least look it, to survive. But me, I was neither. I'm Marcus, by the way, just a regular guy who found himself in the wrong place more times than I care to remember. The streets here, they have a rhythm of their own, a beat that dictates life in ways you can't imagine unless you've lived it. And those green CTA buses, they were like veins, carrying lifeblood through the city, but also sometimes carrying trouble. You never knew what a simple bus ride could turn into. You see, I wasn't technically in a gang, but in my neighborhood, hanging with the gangbangers was as common as going to school, sometimes even more. I wasn't tough, though. Far from it. I was the kid who'd rather hit the books than the streets. But that didn't matter much when you were trying to stay alive. I always thought I was brave. Until that one ride to the West Side changed everything for me. Life in my part of Chi-Town wasn't easy, but it was all I knew. The hum of the city, the constant buzz of danger, it was a soundtrack to my life. Those streets taught me more about real life than any classroom ever could. My ma, she worked 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. And my pops, well, he was out of the picture since I was too young to remember. I found solace at school, Lincoln Park High. It was my escape. A place where I could just be Marcus, the smart kid, not Marcus from the rough part of town. That's where I met her, Michelle. Man, she was something else. Beautiful, with a smile that could light up the darkest alleys of Chicago. She lived out of district, but somehow she ended up at Lincoln Park. Didn't matter to me, though. I was just happy she was there. Michelle and I, we hit it off right away. We talked about everything under the sun during lunch breaks, and I'd carry her backpack as we walked to the bus stop after school. She gave the best hugs. Felt like home, a feeling I didn't get too often. In my mind, she was my girl, even though we never really made it. Official days turned into weeks, and we started spending more time together. She even walked me home once, and though I still had to walk her back to the bus stop, it didn't bother me. Being with her felt right, like a calm in the storm that was my life. But then, Ricky showed up. Pretty Ricky is what they called him. Ricky was from the West Side. A new kid at school, but he carried himself like he owned the place. Dude was in a gang. That much was obvious from the colors he wore, and the way others around him acted. He sold weed, too. Wasn't shy about it. I tried to steer clear, but with Michelle being who she was, it was only a matter of time before our paths crossed. It happened one afternoon as I was walking Michelle to the bus stop. Out of nowhere, Ricky was on me, his hand gripping my shirt, pulling me in close. His eyes were wild, angry. "Why you with my girl?" he snarled. I was shocked, confused. Michelle, his girl. Before I could even get my head straight, he started accusing me of being in a rival gang, throwing up signs, his other fist cocked and ready. We scuffled, drawing a crowd quickly. I wasn't a fighter, but I wasn't about to let him push me around either. But then, out of nowhere, an adult jumped in, trying to break us up. Ricky, that dude was on another level. He started swinging at the guy like he was trying to fight the whole world. That wasn't even the scariest part. A few days later, things took a turn for the worse. Michelle and Ricky, they both disappeared from school for a few days. I didn't think much of it until I got home one evening and Ma told me Michelle had called. Something in her voice over the phone was off. She said she wasn't feeling well and asked if I could come see her at her place on the West Side. Now my mama, she didn't like the West Side, and I knew it'd be hard to convince her to let me go there. So I lied. Told her I was meeting Michelle at the local library for a group project. I grabbed my things and with a heart full of worry and a head full of confusion, I headed to the bus stop. As I stepped onto that green CTA bus, I had no idea that my whole world was about to turn upside down. That bus ride, man, it was the beginning of the end. The bus ride to the West Side, I remember it like it was yesterday. Those green CTA buses, they were like moving islands in a sea of chaos. This ride, though, it felt different. There was a tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. My gut was doing flips, but I pushed the feeling down. I had to see Michelle. The bus was crowded, filled with all sorts of folks just trying to get by. I found a seat near the back, trying to stay low, unnoticed. The city flew by outside the window, a blur of lights and shadows as night began to fall. Then, just as the bus crossed into the west side, hell broke loose. The back door swung open and a guy jumped in. My heart dropped. It was Ricky. He had this wild look in his eyes, holding something metallic and dangerous in his hand. "This is a robbery," he shouted, his voice echoing through the bus. I couldn't believe it. My pockets were empty, save for my bus pass and a stick of gum. I was so broke I couldn't pay attention. My mind was racing. Shit, this was supposed to be about seeing Michelle, not getting robbed on a bus by a madman. Ricky's gaze landed on me. "Sit your punk ass down, empty your pockets," he barked. Fear paralyzed me. I followed his orders, my hands shaking. The bus driver, scared out of his freaking mind, kept driving. I could see the fear in everyone's eyes. Then I heard a familiar voice. It was Michelle. She was part of this? My heart sank. Suddenly there was a loud bang and everything went black. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed, bandaged up and in pain. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Turns out I was pretty close. The bus driver, in a panic, had slammed on the brakes, sending everyone flying. Ricky's weapon had gone off, causing chaos. I lay there, trying to piece together what had happened. They told me several people were injured and that a woman had lost her life. The reality of what had happened hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't know if the bullet had hit me or what, but I knew I'd come too close to death. I never saw Michelle or Ricky again after that night. What happened to them, I couldn't say. But that night changed me. I used to think I was brave, but now I'm just trying to make sense of a world that seems to have lost its mind. That ride to the west side, it wasn't just a trip across town. It was a journey into a nightmare, one I can't seem to wake up from. And as I lie here, staring at the sterile hospital ceiling, I can't help but wonder, was it all worth it? For a pretty face and a heart full of naive dreams. I guess some stories don't have happy endings. Mine sure didn't. As the days turned into weeks, I lay in that hospital bed, my body slowly healing, but my mind was in shambles. The doctor said I was lucky, that the injuries could have been worse. Lucky, huh? Didn't feel that way. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back on that bus, hearing the shouts, the chaos, the gunshot. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. Eventually, I got out of the hospital, but life wasn't the same. The streets I once walked with confidence now seemed menacing, each corner hiding potential danger. I kept thinking about Michelle, about Ricky, about that night. Anger, confusion, sadness. It was a cocktail of emotions I couldn't quite name. It caused me to have PTSD. To this day I get nervous on crowded buses. School became a blur. I walked the halls like a ghost, my thoughts always somewhere else. My grades slipped, but I couldn't care less. What did algebra matter when your life could be flipped upside down in a split second? And then there were the whispers, the looks. Everyone knew what had happened, and I felt their eyes on me, heard their hushed conversations as I passed. "That's the kid from the bus incident," they'd say. I was a walking reminder of the violence that plagued our city, our lives. The police came around asking questions. I told them what I remembered, but it wasn't much. They said Ricky was still at large, that they were doing everything they could to find him. But deep down, I knew he was just another ghost in the machine of Chicago's streets, likely to vanish and never be seen again. Months passed, and the memories started to fade. But the fear never did. I stopped taking the bus, started walking everywhere, even if it took hours. Anything to avoid reliving that night. I lost friends, became more withdrawn, finding solace in solitude. One day I decided to visit the place where it all happened. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I was looking for closure, or maybe I was just torturing myself. The bus stop looked the same, but it felt entirely different. It was just an ordinary place. Yet for me, it held the weight of 1,000 memories. As I stood there, lost in thought, an old man approached me. He must have seen the look on my face because he asked if I was okay. I just nodded, unable to find the words. "Tough times don't last, but tough people do," he said before walking away. I wanted to believe him, but I wasn't sure if I was one of those tough people. In the end, I never found out what happened to Michelle or Ricky. Maybe they moved on. Maybe they didn't. But their absence left a void in my life, a reminder of how quickly things can change, of how fleeting and precious life is. Now, as I sit here writing this, I wonder about the choices we make, the paths we take. I thought I knew what bravery was, what it meant to be tough. But that night on the bus, it taught me that true courage isn't about facing down others. It's about facing yourself, your fears, your mistakes. So this is my story, a chapter of my life I wish I could erase, but know I need to remember. It's a cautionary tale. A tale of a city and its hidden demons, of love and loss, of innocence lost in the blink of an eye. Welcome to Chi Town, where the stories are real and the horrors aren't just in the movies.